As writers, directors, and filmmakers, when we watch a great movie or series, we should not only be watching to be entertained, but to be educated. We should be analyzing these great creative works and learning about what exactly makes them so great. We should be asking ourselves, why do we enjoy this program so much? A great series I recently completed viewing on Netflix is Schitt's Creek. In this video, I will break down just some of the creative and narrative elements that make Schitt's Creek so wonderful and how you can incorporate these elements in your own creative works. While I will not be divulging into major plot points, I will be sharing great aspects of the show. So if you haven't watched Schitt's Creek yet and you want to watch it without any prior knowledge beforehand, this may not be the video for you. Just a little disclaimer. The premise, it's a basic one that we've seen before. A rich, elite New York City family are forced to live in a rural, simple, very non-glamorous little town. While this basic premise of Schitt's Creek is not unique to their show, how the creators expressed and developed this idea is. Remember, as I'm always saying, every story has been told, but not every story has been told with your unique perspective and point of view. And Schitt's Creek, it's a great example of this. In my view, it's the characters that really make the show so special. All different, all interesting, all interacting in ways that are truly delightful. Johnny Rose, the patriarch of the Rose family. He's the most straight-laced out of all the show's characters, but he still has his own unique quirks and views and perspectives. His facial expressions and reactions have me laughing out loud. They're truly priceless. While Johnny is definitely a fish out of water, he never comes across as bitter or angry. He's making the most of his new living situation, though holding true to his big city persona, i.e. continuing to wear suits all the time. The comedy shines through when Johnny and his family interact with the Schitt's Creek locals, who seem to be on a very different wavelength. Arguably the most outlandish Schitt's Creek character is Moira Rose, the matriarch of the family. She's out there. She dresses differently, she talks differently, and she's on a completely different plane of existence. But it works, and it's very funny. A former soap opera actress looking for her next big role, Moira is theatrical in all aspects of her life. Her overly dramatic reactions to normal, everyday occurrences really make for comedy gold. It's played perfectly by Catherine O'Hara. Moira is a fan favorite because she's just so funny and so unique. Some of the show's funniest moments arise when Johnny interacts with the town's mayor, Roland Schitt. A completely different persona than Johnny, Roland lacks most social norms, let alone the norms of high society living. Roland's character, it's outlandish and he can come across as abrasive at times, yet he doesn't seem too mean-spirited or angry. Roland is someone who simply doesn't know any better, and as audience members, we don't expect him to learn. In fact, there's a clear divide between the Schitt's Creek locals' persona and the Roses. The locals in many respects are aloof, good-natured, and undiscerning, while the Roses, to a certain degree, have been jaded by big city living. Roland's wife, Jocelyn, is the most undiscerning and aloof character of them all. Again, very good-natured and sweet, but her detachment from reality is just hilarious. Jocelyn looks at the world with rose-colored glasses, though those glasses are not looking at the real world, it's a world clearly her own. While Jocelyn is overly friendly and nice, she doesn't come across as fake or disingenuous. She's as real can be, yet, as I mentioned, her reality may be different from everyone else's. Alexis Rose. She's also out there, but more grounded than her mother. Alexis is fun, she's upbeat, and also making the most of her new, very challenged situation. A bit self-consumed at times, she has a big heart and comes to love and appreciate the town she never thought she'd end up in. Her one-liners referencing her interactions with celebrities and world figures is so funny, and it gives us insight into the life she used to live and how much her life has changed. And this brings up a good point about character backstories. I'm sure all these side stories Alexis references about her crazy and wild past were developed by the writers when creating Alexis's backstory for the show's Bible. Now, I'll go into TV Bibles in another video, but generally, when creating a TV series, we should create a very fleshed out history for each character, and then we can use that information throughout the series during appropriate moments to push that narrative forward. Another great aspect to the show is that while it's very funny and it's definitely a comedy, there are some really truly touching moments throughout, especially as the show progresses. We follow Alexis as she finds love and relationships and failed relationships, and eventually she develops a really special bond with the town vet, Ted. Their moments bring some real heart to the series. Twyla Sands is another great example of developing character backstories to not only provide insight into the character's past, but also to create comedy and push the narrative forward. Twyla is very sweet, incredibly nice and genuine, yet when she talks about her past, it's really troubled and crazy, which is why it's so funny, because Twyla is so nice. Twyla's good nature really affects Alexis and makes her understand the value of true friendship. In fact, all the Rose's outlook on life and finding meaning and truth in life and what's important and what's not is greatly altered by the characters in Schitt's Creek. David Rose, or Ooh David as his sister calls him, is one of the best. His humorous cynicism is so ripe for levity amongst the show's setting. His one-liners kill, and again, while he's admittedly an elitist jerk, the humor and honesty he brings to awkward situations make him very likable. The crux of the show really relates to David's complete emergence in the town that he hated at first. While David also stays true to his character and persona, he comes to love Schitt's Creek. And as the show progresses, we get the sense that David probably was just as snarky and cynical living in New York City as he is living in Schitt's Creek. It's not the town, it's David. David's love story is at the center of the plot and provides some really touching moments throughout the series. Despite being a small town, none of these characters are small-minded, and the setting is open, accepting, and inclusive. They're all just living their lives, trying to do the best that they can do, helping one another, but of course making big mistakes along the way, which is why we find it so hilarious. And who could forget Stevie Budd? Stevie is fully ingrained in the Schitt's Creek culture. She's a local, but at the same time, she's a complete outsider, which is why her and David hit it off so well. Unlike the other locals, Stevie, she's well aware of the doldrums of small town living, but at the same time, this is her home. She's also very cynical and snarky, just like David, and their back and forth banter is really hilarious. The other supporting characters, Blunt Ronnie, Country Living Mutt, and Wacky Ray and Robert, add comedy and humor throughout the series and push the narrative along amusingly. The setting of Schitt's Creek also adds to the appeal of the series. While the Rosebud Motel is far from luxurious, the set design, along with the ways in which the Roses occupy the space, make it feel like home. Similar situation with the Cafe Tropical restaurant and the Rose Apothecary store. The characters feel like they belong there, and it grounds the series with a sense of setting and locale. I also love the establishing shots of fields and meadows between the scenes. As it immerses the audience in this location and community, it's really just a beautiful setting. The theme, as I see it, of Schitt's Creek is about acceptance. The Roses coming to accept and understand and eventually cherish this place that was originally so foreign to them, and the community embracing the Roses with open arms, inviting them to be a part of their lives and culture. Growth is also a big part of the show, as we see Alexis, David, and Johnny develop into more grounded, real, and ultimately better people. Schitt's Creek is an episodic where a situation arises each episode and the characters respond to and alleviate that issue. However, each episode builds upon the next, which allows the characters and the plot to continue to grow and develop as the series progresses. Aside from these elements, Schitt's Creek, in all great visual content, has that certain something. That's something you can't place your finger on, but you know it's there. That's something special that binds these characters, the plot, the setting, the theme, in a way that's meaningful and truthful to the audience. It's not something I can explain, or really anyone can explain, but you know it when you see it, and it just works. And for Schitt's Creek, it just works. Maybe there's some elements of Schitt's Creek that you can use in developing your series. It's not about taking already existing ideas and calling them your own. It's about understanding the greatness of a particular narrative and making it your own, just like they did with Schitt's Creek. Would love to hear your thoughts about this video. Please leave some comments below.